Generic greetings and welcome to Stellaris. It's been quite a while since we've seen any Stellaris content on the channel. In fact, it's been quite a while since I've played the game in any great depth, and that's for various reasons that I'll get onto probably later on during the video. However, with the release of the 2.3 Wolfe patch as well as the accompanying paid-for DLC called Ancient Relics, I thought it would be a decent opportunity to check the game out and see what's been added, tweaked and changed. So this is that, a bit of a preview, a bit of an overview of what we can see in the latest build and latest DLC of the game. Now, I understand that it's not going to be an exhaustive list. For that, obviously, you can check out the links in the description for a full list of the patch notes and all of that sort of thing. And also, my experience has been limited to a game and a half on two different size galaxies, one 400 star, one 600 star, with two different empires. So enough, I would hope that I've got the most of it down, but certainly not any sort of full review or anything like that. So just bear that in mind. Also, I'm recording this one day before the release of the build, so understand that there might be some tweaks and changes by the time you get hold of it, but I wouldn't expect anything major. So with that, let's just check this thing out. I'm not going to go through the patch stuff and then the DLC because it comes together. It'll just be in whatever order we experience it in. Oh, and by the way, today's beverage is some pink grapefruit juice, and hopefully it will soothe my throat, which is really hurty as of late. Hurty's a thing. Anyway, so this is our empire, the Reltech Sacred Accord, which is in no way, shape or form affiliated with the sound chip manufacturer of a similar name. Our leader is the Reverend Elder Petals of Magenta, who has recently replaced the sadly now deceased Reverend Elder Stalk of Purple, which sounds very painful indeed. We are a theocratic republic because our ethics are egalitarian and fanatic spiritualist, and the reason for that is I really like the psionics in the game, so spiritualist is the best way to go for that, and for the Shroud Ascension stuff. We have Beacon of Liberty and Meritocracy, and we are, after all, a nice democratic peoples. So, this is our very small empire. What I'm going to do is show you this as it is now, because it's in a decent state to show you some of the new stuff, namely the archaeology, and then I load up a later save where we control pretty much all of this, and it'll give you a bit of a contrast. So, where do we start? Well, what I'll do is I'll check out the planet stuff first, and that gives you a sort of bit of an overview of some of the stuff that's changed in that regard. So we're going to check out one of our extra, well, I think it was the second world that we took. In fact, it probably is because it's second in the list. But anyway, this is our world of Grekil, Grekil Prime, in fact, which is just up there. And obviously this thing here has been changing. With the release of 2.2, we saw an overview in the way planets and the population worked. So you now have districts and buildings, and the population is strated into three tiers: leaders, specialists and workers. And with the best will in the world, I was quite nostalgic for the old system, and still are. However, I can appreciate what's been done, and I think it is an improvement in several ways. However, the main point is that it just didn't work. I'll qualify that. And basically, the AI did some interesting things in moving people around, and it ended up where you would have a massive deficit of one thing and it wouldn't move it to the other, and it just didn't feel there. It really didn't. And after several more games after it first came out, 2.2 and multiplayer games, it was just to a point where it was more annoying to play and micromanage all of the priorities than it was to actually play it, which is why basically I hadn't played in quite a while. However, after about 10 or 12 hours on this build, that seemed to have been changed massively. Admittedly, I think a lot of it was improved up to 2.2.6, so, you know, just take that with a pinch of salt, I guess. But needless to say, I've not had any major problems, and as I said, I've tried two different empires and two different sized ones, so there's been no major issues there, so that's good. The layout has changed somewhat. We now have more instant access, so some of the things we need to check out, so like housing and amenities and jobs, etc., has been moved around to be a bit more readable, which is something that's good, and we've got this now a production as well as the deficit. However, the main thing we need to focus on is really on the right hand side. You notice it says Azax 3, and that's where we are there, and it shows you as a core sector, because sector's been changed again, for the millionth time I think now, and I'll get onto sector stuff in a moment, but you actually start in a sector. That is the first sector that we start with, and I'll go on. I'll explain how all that works in but a moment. We really do need to focus at the moment, though, on this bit here. You can notice that we are currently on an agri world, and that's sort of to be expected because we have a lot of agriculture districts. And this was in the game previously, it was just automatically set. However, now we can change it. We can click on this, and we can alter it to say, right, well, actually, we want this instead as a forge world, and that alters the bonuses. So foundry build speed plus 25%, and metallurgist upkeep minus 20%. So you can alter it, which is nice. You can also just say, right, automatic colony selection, and it'll just do it itself. So it's set to a colony, so pop growth speed plus 20% and happiness plus 10%, and it will change that as it goes on. Another automation improvement really has been now that. Well, any planet in the game can be automated. I can just say automate on, and it will build what it thinks it needs to build. As far as I'm aware, this is based on the designation of the world, so whether it be set to urban, mining, or whatever, and it's a set build order, which I assume will be tweaked and changed as the game progresses on, and also it will deviate from that list if things like crime increases and that sort of stuff. So, how do we get that working? Well, I've currently set that to automated on, and I will unpause it, and nothing will happen, and that confused me for quite some time. But the reason for that is, firstly, it doesn't start to build stuff. Actually, what I want to set while we are waiting is
special project complete.
Thank you, special project. I want to start building in this sector. Colony ship. There we go. Anyway, so I digress. Back over to here. You see this is ready to upgrade there, and it's not doing anything. The reason for that is we haven't given it resources. We need to do that. Also, it'll only kick in when there's like no jobs on that one. But let's go over to the planets and sectors. And I'm not going to cover the sector stuff just yet, but I'm really going to focus on the top right here, which is sector resources, monthly, and shared stockpile. You can send resources to sectors like you could in previous versions of the game, but also now you have a shared stockpile. So I can say, right, shared stockpile, I want to transfer 1,000 energy and 4,000 for the minerals, and now you might notice that it is cracking on to build planetary administration. We haven't told it to do that, it's just doing it. And remember, this is from every planet in the game, and that's good, especially when you've got a sprawling empire. It's pretty good. You can still, if you want to, go over to your planets and sectors and set automation for that, so you can still say balanced production, manufacturing, and research. So you can still set that for each of your sectors, but you can also now do it on each of the planets. How those two interact with one another, if you've got automation on planets and automation on the sector stuff, is yet to be seen, and I'll comment more on that later on during the video. But anyway, that's now building. However, if I just say stop that and cancel it, and say delete some of these here, so we're demolishing these bits, and you can see we now got minus housing and jobs are on 2. If I then put that back on there, what will happen is it'll say, right, build a city district, because it's more important in getting more housing rather than getting that. So it does seem very functional. What it's going to be like long term, I can't really comment on, but from what I've seen, quite happy. Okay, so we're going to close that, and we are going to check out sectors just after I have a sip of beverage. Okay, we've got a couple of people working over to the left-hand side because we want to try and get this system taken so we can start colonizing it, so I can show you how sectors are added. But for our original sector there, you might be wondering, how is this done? And now originally when sectors were introduced in the game, it was basically for automation as far as I'm aware, and it would also, I think, slightly alter the amount of stuff you could have in terms of the it was like a hard cap. At the moment, the only real hard cap is I think starbase capacity. You can't build more. But you can go over like naval and stuff like that, as well as over your empire sprawl and administration. You just get penalties for it. In fact, we're already over now. We're currently on empire sprawl 56, but we only have an administrative capacity of 30. But anyway, I digress. For sectors, you would originally add them with influence, and then it was changed so it was automatic, and moving them between one another was a nightmare. And now it is the least terrible it's been. I think that's all the enthusiasm I can muster up for sectors at this point. They work and they are in, however their effectiveness is to be seen. Oh, we've just encountered some Holy Guardians. Hello there. And they'll be down here because, well, as I said, I've played on this map a lot more, so I know where most of the stuff is. So the way sectors work now is that you have a sector capital. So in this case, it is our empire capital, and every system from 4 jumps out will be included automatically to that sector. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why that these two, even though we control them, they haven't been added to it because it's outside of 4. If, however, we moved the sector capital, which we can do, so I can click on this and say, right, move sector capital, it takes 250 influence and it will move it to there. That will then have it, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. That would then be added. 1, 2, 3, 4. So actually, 1, 2, 3. Moving it to there would be better because we would get more, but I don't know if we can. Move capital, yes, we probably can do that. Anyway, we don't want to do that because, no, this is our capital, our actual capital of the entire empire. You can see that this is now cracking on with city districts. It'll probably start going from upgrades, and it'll build the buildings as well as you progress on. And with it being a colony, it's probably going to be a bit non-committal until this changes over to Agri World, and then it'll focus on that. I don't know if it clears tile blockers. I expect that it will, because it seems like a bit of an oversight if it didn't, but yeah, we'll have to see. So, what are some of the new stuff? That's some of the major changes, really, when it comes to planets and automation and sectors. There is currently no way to nudge the sectors between one another. So if you've got, say, a home system here and this is a sector, you can't nudge that one, and I don't think this overwrites it. I believe that's something that they are focusing on later on. I should really prefix this entire thing with the overall TLDR is a lot of the stuff that's been changed and added is like the first iteration. Instead of laying the track in front of the train, it's more of a sit back, let's fix what needs to be fixed and go forward from there. So this is the first iteration of the new sector stuff and the automation, and it's going to be improved later on. I'm rather that than really rush it and then it doesn't work. So yeah, it's just a slightly different approach. With 2.2 we've seen what can go wrong, I guess. So what are the new stuff? Well, we now have archaeological sites, and these are normally you get a sort of couple of paragraphs and you get multiple chapters for this story, and apart from just being a good story, which what Stellaris is really focused on anyway, it's about the majesty of space and all of these intertwining stories and things like that. With all you've got like your scientists going around and the science vessels and all of the encounters and anomalies and stuff. So there's always been that in there, but this is more of like a long form version. So this is the Kleptomaniac Rats. There is one over here as well, but I'm not going to focus too much on it because I don't want to spoil the story, but we'll do one of them anyway. So Kleptomaniac Rats. This planet host to a mammalian society of compulsive gatherers and hoarders. Their labyrinthian city is littered with junk, and their towering ramshackle buildings pieced together from scraps of repurposed materials. As far as the eye can see, there are mountains of knickknacks, ornaments and artifacts. The tiny rat-like inhabitants not produce any goods of their own, but were proficient spacefarers who likely pilfered the things they needed, as well as a whole lot of things they did not need from other alien cultures. So there's our first part of the story there. That's the site summary. We have Chapter 1, which we have not yet done, and you can see on the right hand side here we have this Excavation Phase. Every 90 days what will happen is you roll a dice, specifically a d10, and depending on what you roll, you will either pass and go on to the next stage, fail and nothing happens, or it'll be somewhere in the middle, in which case you'll get clues, and clues help you pass. So you will get through these eventually. If you have a higher skilled scientist there, then that will also help, and then obviously the difficulty can be up and down as well. So let's crack on with that, because we do have a scientist here. So we're going to go over to this scientist and we'll say you crack on with the excavation of that site. So we'll unpause it and the science ship will come along and we will be able to see this is now progressing. So our breakthrough chance is minus 20% and it shows you what we're going to roll. So at least it's quite clear on what your chances are and what you're going to roll. So you can see we've got different percentages in getting some clues and passing it and filling it, etc. So that's fine. So we're going to zoom back out. That one is now cracking on there. I do have this colony ship which I'll send to there, and I will send those over to there. Obviously, ideally we want to take these resources, but we're not really focusing on that. We're trying to really get hold of that. So, we'll go over to max speed because we can. What else do I need to cover? So this thing here, this archaeological site, you can see we've now got an excavation log. So we failed that. We only rolled 5 and we didn't get any clues. So that's a bit of a shame. What happens... Oh, there we go. We've now got a couple of clues there, which is good. So that's now going to increase our chance to 10% to break through to the next bit of this. So what happens once you pass it? Well, it really depends on the site, and things have been overhauled for anomalies, as well as with this new stuff here, because if we go over to the left and say Traditions and Relics, and over to the Relics tab, we now have a Relic section, and also Minor Artifacts. Minor Artifacts are gained from this excavation and archaeology, and also from doing... I believe you can get them from the standard scientist stuff, which is going to could be travel, leave it be. So you will get these. I've currently got 11, and you can set them to do different things. So as you say, sell one to private collectors, it gives us 500 energy, or we can say proclaim religious revelation, which gives us an extra boost of unity there, and 50% ethics attraction for spiritualists for 120 months. And I'm guessing these are changed and set based on your government, your state of the game, as well as your ethics and society, and basically however you create your stuff. We now have something to set here. I'm going to say Starbase influence cost reduction. There we are. So this is now built on, so that's fine. I will get our colony ship to go over, and we'll say now colonize, like so. And you can now name it, which is good, and then unpause and let it crack on. So while they're working on this site, which you can see their chances now 50%, we'll see if we have a breakthrough here. It's decent. No, that didn't work out, but 70% chance for the next one, so we'll see if that happens. Is this person working on over there? They are not. Complete. This is another one over there. I'm not going to read the story up for this one, but... going back to what we were saying about doing these, not only do you get a decent story, you also get a material or in-game advantage for it doing it. So, well, okay, maybe that's a bit of a sort of cop-out. It might not be an advantage to start with, but there's always a reason for doing them. This one, I know what these two give us. This one is much of a muchness. You finish it, I think it's only a couple of chapters long, and you gain some society research, I think. You just gain some research. So there's a statistical reason for doing it rather than just spending time getting a bit of story. This one, however, is a little bit more complicated, and it's to do with... where is it? With this stuff here. Once you do... these sites, there is a chance, depending on which one they are, to gain a relic. And the relics I'll show you in a later save in a moment. Complete. And those are quite powerful, actually. Anyway, so I'm just going to set some research. And it doesn't matter because we're not going to stick to this one. I'm just going to take this plant here. And then I'll be able to show the sector stuff, and then I'll load that other game. So now we have a site event, and we can see that from the first one, so we know that about the rats and what they've been up to. We have Chapter 1 done. So, toppled over buildings, crashed spaceships, lumps of melted junk and trinkets burnt to a crisp indicate that the former inhabitants of Ither fled their homes in the midst of a losing battle against a superior foe. The presence of bodies bearing foreign military insignia suggests that there may have been infighting between the clans of rats native to different homeworlds. Their evacuation efforts were impeded by the unwillingness to abandon their treasured trinkets, and many lost their lives scrabbling to save completely mundane items. And, ooh, okay. It just said toxic stuff and it looked horrible. One artifact, however, seems to have held a special place in their society, the Rubricator. It appears that they fought long and hard to save it, but ultimately had to leave it behind. Curious, that gives us some minor artifacts and moves us on to the next stage. Okay, so good story, and we're finding out what's going on there. Colonization is now in progress over on the left there, which is good. That science ship is there. I'll just put an automatic exploration. I was going to do this site, but there's no point in working through two sites. We'll say mining there, and 1 second. Civilian ships. That one, they'll build there, and we'll say you build there because we now have the ability to harvest these volatile motes. What else has been changed? Well, I think that's the major stuff. There's been 2 new precursors added.
System survey.
I don't know the names exactly, but one is like complete. I think it was the first psionic species, or one at least to encounter what we would know as the Shroud, and the other one is like a base, basically like a massive galaxy-wide organism type thing that terraforms stuff. Not like in a sort of Tyranny late-game, out-of-world thing sort of way. They were actually quite good by all accounts, I think. Anyway, and yeah, so there's 2 precursors. Precursor stuff has also been changed, so you can get them not just set to a particular quadrant, so it's randomized and such, so a bit better for multiple people. We also now have another world. We have a Relic World. So you can see habitability is 80%, and you've got extra amenities usage and upkeep as well, which is all quite bad. Also, if we look at the planetary features, we've got massive crevasse, collapsed spire, shattered solar array, lots of stuff that's really, really wrecked, because it's not like it's not a dead world, it's more of an abandoned one. So it's not one that suffered necessarily a huge sort of ecological disaster and everybody's left or whatever. It's not like a, let's say, like a dead world that you get in the game, or a tomb world. It is livable, but there's obviously been a presence on there that is no longer there. But once you clear it, you can see with this one, if we clear the massive crevasse, we gain an extra industrial sector and also crystal mines, gas extraction wells, and moat harvesting. So that's really good. The solar array, we gain generator districts, and the spire gives us a central spire and increases our research for society, engineering, physics by 15%. So they actually have like a really good bonus there, which is cool. How are we doing for our colonization? Colonization is on its way. You can see this is set to a frontier sector, so that is something that is basically not set in any particular way. We haven't got a sector in there. I think we can... Oh, we will be able to click on it later on once we've colonized that. What else do I need to mention? I think that's the major stuff. Obviously, a lot of the gear has changed from since 2.2, really. You've got this Empire Sprawl and Ministry of Cap, but it's not a hard limit. You just go over it and you get penalties there. I think there's been some tweaks and changes made in that regard. It seems you can have a much bigger Empire without being absolutely hit hard. Fleet Manager, I don't know if it's better or just my perception of it's being better. I've used it quite a bit. To build fleets, and it seems to be less junky than it was before, but I don't know if that's just my perception of it, whether it has or has not changed. There's some more edicts and things like that that's been added and tweaked and changed, and I think that is about it. Policies are still in there. The market's still in there. This can still be a bit micromanagey, but because the AI seems to be a bit better with moving population around, you don't have to... You're not spending most of your time in here trying to balance the books, which is always good. There's another level on our excavation. So... As an Order of the Rats Chaos, somewhat official-looking building towards the centre of the town. There is a digital inventory of every single item, complete with their origins, gross misinterpretations of their intended uses, as well as some highly unhelpful notes on where to find them. The Rubricator, as described as a thingamajig maker with magical powers, has its place to the right of the Empress's lilac ribbon under the under the snout swabs on the four-legged box with the funny face, wherever that is. Curious. Okay, progressing on. So, colony is now established. We can click on that and check this out. We can see that it's in a frontier sector, and it's just set as a colony. So, if we go back out, we can see this is not in any particular area. However, if we go onto that and say... create a new sector. This will create a new sector within the planet as a sector capital. All systems within 4 jumps not previously part of a sector will become part of that new sector. Add, and it does just that. So it's added these ones. Now, as you can see, bit of a problem. It hasn't added that one, even though it is within 4, because this is in the way, because it's not going to barge in and push these back. That's where I think the nudging of sector stuff has to be implemented at some point, because you really want that in a sector, and the only way to get that would be to move this one or redraw it, and at the moment you can't. So I think that's already been pointed out though by the devs, the want to add sector nudging and slight tweaks and changes. But yeah, you can quickly make, as you can see, sectors, so that's pretty cool. Right, so I think that's most of the stuff there. What I'm going to do now is load up a later save on the same map with the same empire, and we'll go through some more stuff. Okay, as you can see, we have progressed on a couple of 100 years, and our Reltech Sacred Accord has gained some new territory. We control most of the north, the northwest, and the west, and we are currently working down to take out the rest of this fella here. And the reason for that is he is allied with this one on the right, and they really don't like me and tried to go to war and go through this system here, which has a 34.9k space station in there, and that didn't go too well for them. There's also the Great Khan kicking off down the bottom, which is causing havoc down there. And yeah, it's been an interesting game. What's also quite interesting is if we go over to the archaeological site that we were currently looking at, the Kleptomaniac Rats, you notice that we are now on stage 5, chapter 5, and if we click on there and zoom in, there is a drake there. Actually, it says a grand dragon. Actually, it says shard there. Okay. It does say grand dragon, hostile. So yeah, what happened is, TLDR, they've collected so much stuff that the dragon turned up and said, I'm proclaiming this is my horde, and then wipe the rest out. So that's a thing. What happens when I defeat that and complete this? I have no idea, because I haven't done it, and that's the fun part. However, I have completed a lot more of the others. You can see when it goes, like, sort of grayed out there, I've completed it. So this one, for example, give me, if I go down to the bottom here, and spoiler alert, I do apologise, it give me the Grand Herald Titan, and I got that about 100 years into the game, which, as you can imagine, set me well and above a lot of the other empires. Also, it had a lot better technology than this. It had all of the dark matter, I think it's the dark matter stuff, shields and the best weapons and Titan weapons, and it basically was the best of the best of the best. Sadly, when you upgrade it, it upgrades it to the highest technology that you own, and then it actually downgraded the full thing, which was something I was very vexed about. But anyway, that happened. I hope that gets changed in the future, because that shouldn't happen. What else happened as well? Well, if we go over to here, we now have 3 relics. So not only do we have like minor artifacts that we can activate different things on, like discover Elgate insights and things like that, we also have these relics, and these relics have 2 things. They have a passive effect and they have an activated effect. So passive for the Blade of the Huntress gives us army morale plus 25% and planet sensor range plus 2. The Surveyor is sensor range plus 1, and the Head of Zarklan, yes, we do have a head as a relic, that gives us spiritualist ethics attraction plus 50%. The passive effects are quite good. So each time you activate these, and you can only have one activated at any one time, and it activates for 120 months. So the Blade gives us 25% sublight speed, the Surveyor gives us scan planets in your territory for new resources. So when I activated that, I got some of this trade value in one of the areas around here, and it was quite a sizable chunk as well. And the Head, which I haven't yet activated, summons a small fallen Empire fleet, because of course it does. So not only do you get a good story out of it, you also get a really decent mechanical advantage as well. Now, a couple of downsides. These cannot currently be traded as far as I'm aware. Also, once they're activated, you can't turn them off, and it means that you can't activate the other one. I can understand that. That's not really a problem. But I think the one potential major downside is this one here. This one here, it says Spiritual Ethics Attraction plus 50%. Imagine I got that as a materialist. Now, I'm not too sure if that's possible. I don't know whether the relics have been balanced and gauged based on your government and ethics. If so, then that's fine. If not, and you could pick this up as any faction, and because you can't trade them or delete them, it means that if you pick that up, that's going to massively disrupt your empire. So maybe that has to be looked into the future if that is the case. Hopefully it is not the case, and just being able to delete them, if nothing else, would sort of solve that anyway. So overall, when it comes to the Ancient Relics story pack, I honestly can't say there's been a foot put wrong. I think it's a fantastic addition to the game. The story packs have always been really good, because obviously the game is about the majesty of space and the story, and you do get a lot out of it. And this is just improved on that, and I really like it, and I hope we see more of this. I hope they just add more stories and more archaeology into the game. There could be a potential balance issue, but as someone who plays Comp Stomp and just co-op with friends, that really isn't a concern for me personally, but I can understand if there is some ones later on. As I said, I got this Titan very early on, and that put me well and above everybody else. But then, you know, like I say, perhaps it's balanced, perhaps it is set so you only encounter some of them later on during the game, and if that's the case, then fine. But so far, after about 15 hours, I think this is fantastic, and there's no real, really can't see any glaring big issues, but those will obviously start to be exposed the more and more you play, and hopefully if there's any of those, they will be addressed. But so far, first impressions for that, belting, absolutely belting. Like I say, the story packs have always been a real strength of it, so this one, yeah, definitely something I would recommend picking up for anyone that like plays a lot of it. As for 2.3, improvements all round. However, it still has some underlying things. With the automation of the planets as well as the sector stuff, I don't know what sectors are for anymore, because I don't use these sector automation stuff. I don't use it. I just set my planets away. I don't mind the shared stockpile stuff, but why on earth, if it's in your core sector or whatever, you can't just say automated and do it? I can sort of see why they've done it that way, because otherwise it would mean that resources are streaming out of your pile when you don't want it to. So I can understand why that's been added. It would be nice to be able to say, well, look, just take, if I've got, say, 30% extra of what I need or whatever. Like, say, basically, you can say, look, you can use 30% of any resources I have. Maybe something like that would be okay. I don't mind the way they've done this, though, with the shared stockpile stuff. It's just a little bit iffy there. What I don't like is that you can set these at any point. It's a micromanagement thing. I can say, right, I want to build loads of generators. Right, I'm going to go over, I'm going to set it to Generator World, and look, I now have Generator District build speed plus 25%. And you're just going to really build them, build them really fast. So I'm going to say, build, build, build. They're going to be a lot quicker than if I was, say, Industrial World, but then I can change it at any point. I can understand it being changed. I like that, but why there's no cost associated with it, or cooldown, as in you can only change it once every, say, 10 years, or some downside from changing it like that, I don't know. I don't know why that hasn't been put in, because if you're changing from industrial to agricultural to mining, it's completely against the whole idea of having these different stratas. The whole idea with changing this is so you can't put a scientist to work on a farm and then working in a forge, doing all that sort of thing. It had to be more organic and more real, whereas that you wouldn't be able to. I mean, yes, you can change the focus, but changing from mining to agri wouldn't immediately have within that instant an effect. So I can understand being able to change it, and I like that, but I would love to see either, say, like a 10-year cooldown or some sort of cooldown for it, or maybe it alter the happiness and stability of the planet if you change it, like one after the other and on and again, or it just cost influence. Anything like that would be fine. I would probably say the best option is maybe, like I say, a cooldown of some kind, so you can't change it for every, say, 10 years. Basically like when you've got with your policies. Your policies, you can change that. You can say, right, we're going to change that to, say, allowed 10 years. Yeah, so I think that's probably... I would like to see that added. I would like to see that sort of change there. What else? AI has been improved, and performance does seem to be improved as well, which is a good thing. However, the AI still does interesting stuff. Like, it won't allow me through certain territories, even though they're getting absolutely smashed from the other side, from the Great Khan. The AI will almost... Well, I've never seen it allow you to trade any... I've never seen it accept a trade for planets. So I'll say, look, transfer system, give me that system there, right? I can give it every resource I own, and it will never do it. Even if it would be to their advantage. Nothing I can give it will alter its mind, and that's a bit of a shame. Basically, diplomacy I would like to see expanded, but that's more of a future us thing. That's just something I wanted to mention. But either way, in terms of 2.3 and the DLC, very happy with it. It's changed things that I think need to be changed, improved things that need to be improved, and just added a nice little extra bit. Like I say, the storage stuff has always been powerful and interesting, and this one definitely. Sectors, yeah, we can see I can see those being changed later on, and they've already stressed that this is like the first iteration in sectors. Nudging is something they're looking at. I think the mix between sector automation and planetary automation has to be brought more in line. I don't see the point in... You're either going to automate the sectors or you're going to automate the planets, and how those two currently work together, if you automate a planet and then a sector, I don't know how it works. I honestly don't know what issues there are there, but it's hopefully that'll be improved and changed upon as it progresses on. But good progress. Glad to see it's sort of getting back on track. And is certainly infinitely more playable than it has been previously, like I say, with 2.2. Good idea, execution, ooh, a bit iffy at times. But anyway, that has been a bit of Stellaris. If you like what you see, then by all means, links in the description. If you want to see more, then by all means, let me know. I'm up for playing some more and jumping back on to do a series. And yeah, we'll see how this one goes. As always, hope you have enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and generic partings.